Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you, mate. How are you?
How's life in Conjurer?
Yeah, not too bad. Can't complain, to be honest. We're very fortunate. Everything's going all right.
We're exactly a month away from the album.
We are, yeah. I just did a social media post not 20 minutes ago to highlight that fact on Instagram.
There you go. So I've seen somebody wrote that Conjurer are, well, I think it said the future of British metal is in safe hands.
Yeah, we see a lot of that, which is very kind, but yeah, it's a big statement.
I mean, that's a lot to live up to.
Yeah.
How do you feel about those kind of things that people are saying?
It's a tricky one. Because we kind of see it from like all angles, if that makes sense. Like I just said, on one hand, it like first and foremost, it's very kind, like it's very nice, and it's kind of insane that people listen to our band and feel that way about it, especially like enough to then write it down and put it on the internet. That's kind of weird still. But then on the other hand, there's a little bit of us that's just like, really, us? I mean, we're just four idiots in a band. Like, we like the music we make, and obviously we make it first and foremost for us, and we hope everyone else likes it. So we're very happy that people do. But yeah, really, us, we're the future of British metal. But it is what it is. So first and foremost, it's just very kind, and like we appreciate the nice things that everyone have been saying about us over the last few years.
The British metal scene seems in really good shape at the moment.
Yeah.
So what other bands do you see coming up alongside you?
There's been a few. It's kind of come and gone. Like a lot of the bands that we kind of like see as peers and stuff are technically like a few albums further in than us, but like we've made really good friends with bands like Employed to Serve and Palm Reader. I can see you're wearing a Harriet shirt. Like they're like kind of, they feel like the next big thing. Like if we're talking about actual like future of British metal, they're one of the bands that are really coming up now and like taking the scene by storm. I'm sure like there's so many people that I'm forgetting, and as soon as we hang up I'll be like, oh, them and them and them. But you're right, the British scene for the last, obviously the pandemic stunted everything, but I would say for the past 5 to 7 years, like there's just been a great crop of bands that seem to have come through that we're like honored, to be honest, to be like a part of and be rubbing shoulders with.
Speaking of pandemics, which we kind of have to these days,
yeah,
would this album have been out sooner if it wasn't for the pandemic, or do you think it's just giving you room to breathe?
Kind of both. So in terms of writing it and actually get it done and recorded, I don't want to say we needed the pandemic because then make it sound like a good thing, because obviously it was overall awful for everyone, but we're very bad at writing like on the road or kind of actively writing if we're doing something else as well. We very much need to be focused on that. And so having the pandemic happen and having like 1.5 to 2 years where we couldn't do anything else but stay at home and write music, we kind of needed that push to get it done. But then the other side of that coming out of it is, unfortunately, because of all the stuff with vinyl and delays and whatnot because of the pandemic, that means then even though we've had it done and ready to go, it's been pushed back and released from when we initially wanted it out anyway. I think the original plans were mid to late last year. And then we've ended up, say, because we wanted to get it all out as one package and not be like, okay, here's your album, and if you ordered a vinyl, you'll get it in 6 months, because we wanted it to be that whole thing. That means that we've had to push back a little bit. So it's been, good and bad in that sense, that it meant we could get it done, but once it was done, we couldn't then get it out because of the kind of knock-on effect it had.
And what do you think you've learned from the first album that's helped you on this one?
Kind of everything, to be honest. Like now that we're getting to the point where we are kind of speaking to people like yourself and having to reflect on it a little bit, we're kind of realizing that we've had the last 4 years to develop and grow and all that, but kind of learn how all of this works and like take this into, because this is like we've all been in like kind of crappy local bands, and that's how we knew each other before Conjurer started. But this is the first band that's really gone anywhere, and it's already just off the first album gone way further than we ever expected it to. So a lot of it has just been kind of taking it as it comes and learning how that stuff works, so that when now you're right, we can apply it to the new album and use that as stepping stones. So it's just all the like boring industry side of it to like what's the best way to effectively like tour, both from like a again, like a business standpoint, but also just as people, like how do we go out and do this and make this sustainable in a way that it's still fun for us and all of that. Kind of every little weird nook and cranny of being in a band, we've been able to kind of learn and adapt from doing it on the first album, so that now hopefully we're in a kind of as good a place as ever to push forward on this one.
With this one, did you have like a catalyst moment with this one? What was the first thing that kind of started on this album? What was it, like a song or a kind of a vibe that you were going for?
Kind of. We'd had ideas for the album in terms of like stuff that we wanted to do like visually with artwork. We always kind of knew we wanted a painting and it to be revolving around a face. So we had that idea first before any music was written. But then from there, we only really, for the longest time, had kind of one song, which ended up being The Bones of, I need to think of proper titles now and not fake working titles. Those Years Condemned, that's the one. I want to say it's track 5 on the album. That was kind of the first one that had the bare bones of it. And then everything else, like I say, came when we had to really knuckle down in the pandemic. But yeah, once we had kind of decided that, right, enough is enough, we need to cap Mire off now. The first kind of ideas that we had were more over like, the artwork side of it, and more like, kind of like say the vibe and that sort of thing, rather than here are the musical notes we want to get out there or anything like that.
So what is your process when it comes to actually writing the music?
Oh, it's awful. We're very, we're kind of conscious to try and change it slightly going forward to see if it kind of yields different results or just kind of keeps it interesting for us. But at the moment, everything's always been, we write individually at home, kind of tab it up or record it or whatever at home and send the ideas across to each other. For the longest time, that was by email as well. It took literal years to get Jan, our drummer, onto like WhatsApp, rather than if we were to have a band conversation. For the longest time, it was an email thread and it was horrible. But yeah, it's always been that way. We'd always write separately, kind of throw the ideas together in like a Guitar Pro tab and stuff like that, and write that way and build songs up. And then once we had at least the bare bones of a song to go, we then might all learn it and then take it into a practice room and see how we feel and kind of go from there. But yeah, pretty much we write individually and then come together and build it up kind of over the internet, to be honest, which is why it takes us so long to do, essentially, because we can't do that whilst we're on tour. So that was part of the problem, is that we were very lucky that we just kept going offer after offer off the back of Mire and like all these cool tours. But that meant that we weren't at home kind of long enough for any period of time to really knuckle down and get that process going, because once we've got going and like ideas are pinging back and forth, it's not too bad. But this was also the first time since the band had started that we were at zero. Like any song we had written that we had deemed acceptable to be put out had either come out on the EP or Mire, and so we were literally starting again. And it took us a little while to kind of get those songs and those ideas going, and then it took off from there. But before that point, it's really slow going, because even then once we've got the song there, we argue over the tiniest little details as well. So every single part of the process is painstaking and horrible, but touch wood has so far yielded like good results and has worked out for us this far.
Lyrics and vocals, is that like the last part of the puzzle?
Pretty much, yes. It's stuff where like whoever's writing them, like it's normally Dan for a lot of it, but he might have ideas and stuff that he wants to write about, and like, oh yeah, kind of thought of a line or something. But really, until we've got the actual song that we're going to be fitting the lyrics and the words to or around, we don't get too far with them. Like on this, a lot of the lyrics were written in the studio whilst tracking vocals, so they're definitely not an afterthought in that sense. I don't want that to come across where like we just chuck them on at the end. We definitely put as much thought and attention to it, but it is the last thing that gets done, realistically.
What are the themes that you're covering on this album lyrically?
A lot of it is still very much like introspective and like mental health based. We touched on that a little bit with the EP and Mire and all of that. So a lot of songs deal with that still. And kind of, to be honest, everything we do or at least have done up to this point, is whatever the topic is, it's still always kind of looking at it from the human perspective, if that makes sense. So there's the ones that are more obvious and kind of like to the point where it is just talking about general mental health, but then there's songs on the album about like indoctrination, and there's songs about like death and kind of like dealing with a death and grieving and all of that sort of stuff. There's songs about like family relationships and kind of strained relationships in that way, but it's always from a personal perspective rather than just we're writing about war or something like that. It's always how these things affect like a person rather than just the topic itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I love about Conjurer is that you're not talking about demons and dragons and things like that, and you're not talking about war, like you say. There's definitely a personal connection through the lyrics.
Yeah,
and that's expressed through the music. Obviously, it all comes together really, really well. And then on this album, you've worked with Will Putney, like one of my favorite producers. How did that all come about?
So initially, I think the first time we kind of got in contact with him or like worked with him, obviously we knew who he was from the albums he'd done, all that stuff, and we very much admired his work. But we did a tour in America with Rivers of Nile, where the last show of that tour got filmed, and Kerrang put it up on their YouTube. It's still up there now. And he ended up mixing that, which we had no idea about. We weren't told kind of beforehand, oh, we're going to film this and Will Putney's going to mix it. That was like a nice little cherry on top that we found out afterwards, and it sounded great. So we were, and our whole thing is very like, we'd love being in the studio and writing songs, but we're very much a live band. And so I think when we heard that and saw that video, we're like, he's really captured like our sound really well, even though he wasn't there to mic it all up himself. We weren't using like our ideal gear. It was like gear that we'd borrowed or rented for the tour, that sort of stuff. Like we were just kind of blown away with how well he did, considering how little he had to work with. And so that very much kind of put it in our minds to be like, well, who do we want to go to for the next album? And we considered a few other people as well, and like listened to albums that had come out recently, kind of it's what we were interested in, and like we thought, oh, what do we want the next album to sound like? But yeah, we just kind of kept coming back to Will as who we thought could take it in the direction we wanted to. And we were also aware, like we reached out to him and we kind of went back and forth, but we were aware that we were definitely the sort of thing that he was trying to lean into as well, because he comes kind of like I'm sure he'd hate this topic. He's like ended up being like the king of deathcore and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Just through like obviously the Fit for an Autopsy and all that sort of thing. But I think he's very much trying to make a conscious effort to step out of that as well. And he's done that with albums that have come up before ours anyway. But it just seemed to work out as a perfect match to be like, okay, well, we think you're going to be great for what we're trying to do. It sounds like we're the sort of thing you want to do. Like, let's do it, essentially. And then, yeah, we were just trying to work out all the details of, okay, are we going to fly over to him? We're going to fly him over and get a studio. And then the pandemic hit and we couldn't do it that way at all. So he ended up only mixing and mastering the album rather than doing a full production job, which was kind of a shame. But like, still, like, just even that we're like super happy with, and he's done an amazing job on it. And it just means that we can, like, we don't know what's going to happen for album 3. We've not even got album out yet, but it means that's still an option for us, if that makes sense. So it's like, okay, well, hopefully next time, if we decide we want to go with Will again, that's something to look forward to. And the fact that we can go and work with him fully.
I know you've been announcing dates already.
Yes.
How far in advance are you? Because we're in Montreal, so
yep.
Obviously people will be hoping that you're going to come back to North America. I saw you when you played in Montreal with Revocation and Voivod.
Yeah, wicked. That was great.
Yeah. So I know you've got festivals and you've got European dates. Anything beyond that?
Nothing as far as I'm aware that is confirmed, if that makes sense. Like we've just announced our headline tour for the end of the year, but yeah, that's only UK and Europe. And then we know what we want to do after that, but there's nothing, there wouldn't be anything I could announce anyway that isn't already out there. But we've got the plans that we want to do, and North America is definitely in there. So, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's easy for us to say, but we need to actually, get it kind of booked and locked in. It depends what offers we get and what tours are out there. But no, the plan is festival season for the rest of this year, then our headline tour at the end of the year. And then 2023 onwards, we want to be coming to America like at least twice, to be honest. We want to hit like a full Australian tour, like Japan, loads of places that we haven't hit before is the goal and what we're trying to work towards. But there's nothing yet that's nailed on where I can go, oh, I can't tell you yet, but we are coming to America or anything like that. It's like, it's one of the things we said we're going to do it and we want to do it. We just need to make it happen, essentially.
When you guys are on the bus or however you're getting between gigs, what are you listening to?
That's a great question. It really varies. We've spent the last, I would say, couple of tours listening almost exclusively to the first half of Death Magnetic.
Okay.
For no reason other than we were on a tour bus. We did a month with a band called Celeste around Europe.
I love Celeste.
Oh yeah, there you go. Celeste, they're the best.
I interviewed Japan as well.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, wicked. Yeah, he's a really cool guy. So yeah, we were on a bus with them and we ended up having a fill-in drummer, a guy called Noah C, who's phenomenal, but he's also a huge Metallica fan. And so, I mean, most people are, but like, it was one of those where we hadn't like talked about or really listened to Metallica in a little while. And so through talking to him and being like, oh, what's your favorite Metallica and all that sort of stuff, we ended up watching, of course, as everyone does, you end up watching Some Kind of Monster. So we watched that twice on that tour.
Just to remind you about inter-band relationships.
Absolutely, yeah. Just to ground ourselves and give us some perspective on how where things could end up. But yeah, through that, then we ended up basically exclusively listening to what people would say is not good Metallica. So it was St. Anger songs. It was I think Death Magnetic is good, but yeah, Death Magnetic. But then we would never seem to make it past the first 4 or 5 songs before we turned it off. Load, reload. So yeah, communally, it's been a lot of that, a lot of silliness. I'm trying to think. We've just done a few days in Scandinavia, and as we were kind of on the last day of that, the new Malevolence album came out. So we put that on the van and listened to that together. Otherwise, to be honest, we don't do a huge amount of like communal listening, if that makes sense.
Right.
If we're driving the van ourselves, like whoever's obviously driving and the person in the front with them will put something on, but normally the people in the back will have headphones in or be talking or doing something else. So it's rare that we sit and listen to stuff together. And apparently when we do, it's just stupid, bad Metallica albums.
But nobody listens to Metallica and metal all the time, even you know when you're on.
That's very true.
For you personally, not as a band, like if you've got your headphones on and you just want to chill out or listen to something completely different, what would you choose?
At the moment, the things I kind of go for, the latest Delta Sleep album, I really like. I got really into I'm probably going to butcher this, but is it Oliver Arnold's?
Yeah. Is he from Iceland?
Yes, his Island Songs album, I really like. That's like a really nice
I saw him in a church here.
That sounds great. That sounds like the perfect place where you would go and see.
It kind of was. I've seen a few people that I follow on Twitter that are like metal journalists or people like that, and so many of them have just been to see Dua Lipa in concert.
That's fair, yeah.
Seems to be like a really random thread there.
I think there's feel like our personal one for that is Carly Rae Jepsen. As a band, we are huge Carly Rae Jepsen fans. One of the only gigs that we've all been to together, like gone out as a band, is a Carly Rae gig. So that's our one. So yeah, it's definitely up there. That Silk Sonic album from last year was incredible. But yeah, you're right. It would be mind-numbing to go on tour, play 30 metal shows, and then spend the time between listening to metal.
Yeah. Well, whatever you end up listening to, I hope you enjoy the tour, and congratulations on the album. I feel like you guys it's just a matter of time now. Like, and I interviewed Brady a few years ago when Mire came out, and he said,
sorry to hear that.
The perfect tour for him would be opening for Gojira. Does that still feel like?
Yeah, I'd still take that. Yeah. Yeah, we've come annoyingly close a couple of times. Never like a full tour, but like playing a couple of shows with them, and it's just never quite worked out. So that's one that's been just out of reach. And so yeah, I think we would definitely take that at the drop of a hat if they were ever to reach out and offer that. I think that's still the front runner.
That's a good fit, I think.
So well, so do we. But yeah, especially on Mire, like the stuff on Pathos feels like it stretches maybe a little bit further away from what they're doing, but still, yeah, not enough where we would stick out like a sore thumb. So yeah, I think if we had to pick one band, Gojira is still probably the one. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's out there in the universe for sure now. I think it's
yeah. Well, so I don't know who I have to talk to hook that up, but yeah, as soon as possible. Like I say, let's get this train moving.
Excellent. Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you, but in the meantime, enjoy your own shows and enjoy the release of this album, and hopefully we'll see you this side of the Atlantic at some point.
As soon as possible. Yeah, we will make our way out there. Thank you very much, mate.
All right, cheers, Connor. Have a good day.
See ya. Bye.